Hey everyone, Chris Stegall here with MK Partners, and I'm joined today by Jesus Penaloza. Hi, Jesus.
Hey, how's it going, Chris?
As you probably know, if you've watched our videos before, I am a huge fan of building apps in Salesforce, both for business purposes and personal reasons. It's a terrific way to learn about features and functionality in Salesforce, and it's always easier to sort of dig your teeth in when it's a passion project or something you're excited about. So in the past, we've taken a look at, a March Madness tool to manage your brackets in Salesforce. I built that little Dungeons and Dragons character sheet with the help of a developer, building a little dice roller and everything. And just recently, I started a new app to help me manage my wardrobe. So it's called My Closet here, and it keeps track of, all the items and orders and sources and when stuff gets worn, what makes up an outfit, how often that clothing has been perceived on me, etc. And then, of course, reports, so I can see what my most worn items of clothing are, you know, how much it costs per wear, per hour, and all sorts of dorky breakdowns like that. And Jesus, I know you're working on a more business-oriented app yourself right now. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Well, one of the things I realized is, when you do all these modules and trails within the what do you call Trailhead, you find out that trying to put that into some actual hands-on experience. There's various ways you can do that. So it's really nice to be able to look at the fact that the app itself, developing an app, actually lets you put all that together. So yes, one of the things that I was kind of tasked to do was to coordinate events moving forward for our company. And one of the neat things that we came up with is, why don't we find a way to coordinate all the information needed to assess an event? So pretty much any information I need to gather in order to complete an event, that way I can run reports and analyze what worked, what didn't work, and what could be improved as a means of using Salesforce to do this. So that actually got my little brain, creativity pumping a little bit. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. So obviously, objects, fields, relationships, and dependencies were the four things that I kind of noticed that I needed to kind of take it two steps back in order to kind of figure out, okay, how do all these things kind of get put together when we're talking about real hands-on experience?
Yeah.
So it was really nice to kind of just look into that perspective and figure out, hey, you know what exactly should I be looking at, and how do I want to solve this problem that I put myself into?
Yeah, that's sort of the beginning step of building an app, is figuring out like what are all the building blocks that I'm going to need and how is everything related to each other. And with events, you've got your hands full because there are Salesforce events going on constantly, all over the country, all over the world, and figuring out, when and where will we participate, and what does that participation look like, and how do we plan travel. So I imagine there's a lot of, components going into the crafting of that. Um, One thing that I've done in the development of this app that I had never done before was use Schema Builder for the creation of the objects and fields, as opposed to doing it from the object manager page where I had, historically done all of my creation and configuration and customization. Um, and so I think one of my big takeaways is just how helpful Schema Builder is in terms of visualizing the relationships between your data and the various objects. So you can see here, like if we zoom in, each one of these boxes, right, is an object. And then the lines show you relationships between objects. So we can see that every item can be tied to a where. It also has, the order that it came from, the source that it was purchased from, um, the outfits of which it is a component member. And just having the ability to quickly and easily, add an object by simply dragging an object here. And let's say we wanted to create a new object called steal something out of your playbook and make an events object here, but let's say this would be events, that we were going to wear an item at. And the fact that you can just whip these up on the fly, and then once they are created, go ahead and start editing the fields directly from Schema Builder. So here we have my events. It's not linked to anything yet, right? But if I wanted to add a lookup to tie it to an item, I could go ahead and say, this is going to be item. It's related to the items object. Click save. And now they're tied together. And then if I go to an individual record for this event, I'll be able to see on the related lists which items it's tied to. So, as somebody who hadn't played with Schema Builder before and was doing it all in the object manager itself here, where it's, let's create a new custom object right here. Schema Builder for me was an eye-opener, and I think it's a super powerful tool that admins and people that want to develop without code are really going to be able to lean on to whip stuff up quickly and really instantly visualize it. Have you had a chance to look at Schema Builder at all in your
Oh,
development of the
definitely.
events app?
That is the one thing that I started using when I was creating my objects and fields, because like you said, going through the trail and those modules, they give you the basic to object manager. And, it's not as difficult to follow, but actually visualizing how everything's connected, you can't necessarily see that unless you have that little bit more of a code perspective or kind of a little bit more advanced level, I would want to say. So the Schema Builder actually helps you just easily see and how everything is connected, which is very helpful. So like I said, putting all those building blocks together makes it so much easier. So now you can actually focus more on your relationships and dependencies between those object and fields, which is just pieces of information. So for example, for the event that I'm working on right now, some of the things that I ran into is each event has a set of activities, right? And each of those activities can be scaled in different areas, such as, for example, an activity can be a type of equipment, or let's say some sort of actual during the event itself. Let's say we're going to do for example, a presentation of some sort. That's one type of activity, right? Versus an actual some sort of artwork, right? Or some sort of handout, like a card itself, a physical card, or maybe a digital. Everything has some sort of value, or let's say something that we're going to give away. So each event has a set of activities. Is what I've started to reference those two pieces of information, and each activity can belong to one or more events. So that relationship started making me realize, okay, how are we going to interconnect those two together? So I'm still working through identifying, one of the methods to make this relationship work within Salesforce. But it did come to mind and realize that, hey, you know what? The Schema Builder, the visual aspect of it, lets you see those interconnected activities and figure out, okay, what do I need in order to make this relationship work? So most definitely I agree with you on that, Schema Builder does help you easily troubleshoot some of those things that you wouldn't be able to see through Object Manager. Unless you had been using pretty sure Salesforce for quite some time, you would be able to quickly identify, okay, what do you call permission sets, page layouts, dependencies, all those play a key role. And as I started kind of working through Schema Builder a little more, I realized that when you remove something from Schema Builder, it doesn't necessarily mean it's completely been removed. You still have to go to Object Manager and do the actual removal, so complete removal of it, which is a good thing. It doesn't just, when you make any changes, it doesn't mean it's permanently gone. But it's also something you may not, be familiar with, for example, as a new user like myself. And one of the issues I ran into when I was trying to work through and kind of figure out, okay, as I'm building up my objects, I realized, okay, dependencies don't make sense. I have to kind of remove some of the dependencies. And when I tried to remove them, I kept getting an error telling me that, my dependency wasn't fully removed. Then I went and did a little bit of search through the Salesforce help page, I realized that you have to go to the object manager and the deleted fields to actually remove that field. So no,
Interesting.
definitely a great way to
And now, when you
identify.
say, sorry, when you talk about removing something from the schema builder, did you mean removing it, like unchecking it here so it no longer appears on the screen, like I'm doing with the where item there? Or are you talking about like when I click this and I say delete object?
So actually, deleting the relationship. So you have the lookup relationship, you have the many-to-many relationship. Those are the ones that make the interconnection between one object to the other through some sort of field. If it's through a related list field or through a many-to-many field, which would create based on a child-parent relationship. If you remove those directly from Schema Builder, and you try to connect, let's say, for example, you don't want that kind of relationship, you realize, okay, you just need a lookup versus a many-to-many, then if you remove that through Schema Builder, and you try to map it to a new relationship, it will not allow you because it'll tell you that that field is still connected by some means. So if you want
Got
to
it.
remove the object itself and those relationships are still there, you will not be allowed to remove it because Salesforce will know that that field, even though it's been removed from Schema Builder, it hasn't been deleted from Object Manager. Once you do that deletion from Object Manager, then you can go ahead and remap your object to object relationships. So
Okay.
it's a good security measure. Obviously, you can't just go in and start removing stuff. But as a new user, I come to realize that because obviously I use Schema Builder as a way to kind of brainstorm, just kind of throw things together because until you start using page layouts to map the actual objects and then develop the app itself, none of this stuff gets connected within any your what do you call playground org or sandbox or anything that you're using to kind of test this out until you start actually putting these objects in somewhere where they're going to be used.
Yeah.
So
And
I like Schema Builder because it helps me it's just like a little bit of a, what do you call, just a big chalkboard that I can just kind of throw things together and be like, okay, this works with this, and then how will this work together, and what's the communication between this object, and what fields are going to map it together. So
yeah. And just so that the audience, can learn from the lessons that we learned. So when you say removing an object or the relationship from Schema Builder, where would I click to do that? Are you saying like if I like so
so
this
we
item
add
warn is a lookup. If I right click and then delete field, you're saying it won't delete it from I still have to go into
No,
Object
so if
Manager?
we add a relationship, so for example, the relationship between that where and the where, um,
This is a we can
yes,
talk about this too, the where item junction.
yes,
I'll talk about that in a second because that was sort of
okay.
a many to many workaround. But yeah, so I got a relationship here. It's master detail from the where to the where item junction.
So that's the field I'm talking about. So if you were to remove that field, so you can right click on that field and delete it from Schema Builder. Um, if you do that and then you try to map a new field, a new relationship between those two objects, then it will let you know that you can't do that because it's already mapped to something else.
Got it. So it's about if I delete the field on this object,
Yes,
the
because
relationship
that's
still
the field
exists.
used to do the relationship between the two objects.
Okay. And
Because I
that is a
kept finding out that the issue I ran into is because the way I was mapping, I was doing a many-to-many relationships, and you are limited to two many-to-many relationships between objects. So you couldn't do a third one. So I think that's just a Salesforce limitation.
right. And that is a good segue into another thing that I learned is these junction objects. Because with master detail relationships, you can do a one to many, or with lookups. With master detail, you can do one to one or one to many. But if you need to do many to many, right? Because like I think outfits is probably a better example, but like an outfit is going to be composed of many items. You have a shirt, pants, shoes, whatever. Um, so an outfit will have many items, but an item might also be used in several different outfits. You have a favorite jacket, and sometimes you wear it with a tie, and sometimes you don't wear it with a tie, and you have a casual version and a formal event version. So you need multiple items to be able to tie to an outfit, but you also need multiple outfits to be able to tie to an item. You can't do that many to many relationship with something that you can select over here from elements. So what you need is something called a junction object, where you actually, it lives in between the two items that you're trying to create that relationship with, and then has a master detail lookup both to item and to outfits. And then this junction object produces a result where on the item screen, I can look at related and see every outfit that it's in. And on the outfit screen, I can see all of the items that are composed of it. So it creates that many-to-many relationship, all with the introduction of this sort of in-between object. And so that was it was something that I had heard around the office a lot and heard about junction objects, but hadn't seen in any of the trailheads that I had done any use case where I needed to create one yet. So this was like another good example of start building stuff for yourself, and you'll start running into real problems and find out like what trailblazers are doing to solve them, you know?
I think that might be something I will need to use on my
I think
app
so,
then.
yeah. Yeah, especially like just thinking about the kind of things that we do at events, or like you were saying, like activities, or maybe even like collateral that you would bring. You're probably going to bring a few different pieces of collateral to every event: business cards, flyers, t-shirts, maybe a PowerPoint that you're going to display. So you need to have multiple collateral items tied to an event, but you also might need multiple events tied to each collateral item, because you're going to bring
Yes,
those things more than
that is
one place,
correct.
right? So that would be a good
Hmm.
instance for a junction object. So
Yep. And then within the what do you call, within each of them, I believe you would need, depending on how much of a detail you want to go in within the reports. If you want to quantify some sort of expense or something, if there's an expense tied into each of those, then that could be something else to add into it as well. So
yeah,
those are definitely good observation. And those are things that kind of were going. I was brainstorming to figure out what's the best way to make that, actually make sense within the objects and fields, especially in the relationships.
yeah. One of the other things that I realized in using Schema Builder, because I feel like it's a super intuitive way to create these objects and relationships and really imagine how your records are going to tie together. But the one thing that I missed when you create an object this way by just dragging the object onto the screen, right, is when you create an object in the object manager, at the very end, they've got that little checkbox for launch a new custom tab wizard after you create this object. And when you do it in Schema Builder, it doesn't have that as like a little pop-up wizard option. Um, and that's one of those things that I think is super important, because like, once you actually get into the app, these tabs, the tabs for your relevant objects, can't be populated unless you've created a tab for the object as well. So that's one of those gotchas that I learned in Schema Builder is, go ahead and create your whole network of relationships, but then afterwards you do need to figure out which tabs you want, and then go back into setup and create tabs for all of them so you can actually have them show up at the top here.
Yeah, I believe I did run into that issue, and just what you said, I think fixed it. Um, on that note, I did want to also mention that when you are creating using Schema Builder to create your objects and fields, if you want to organize the layout on when you have to create new records within the app itself, I did find out that you have to go to the page lab and change the orientation of the field placement, because it will place the fields in the default order that the page layout is set up to. So going into the page layout helps format the structure of how you want new records to be entered. And this is from a perspective where you have a user inputting data on a record to record basis, not doing mass data uploads. Those would
Yeah,
obviously, the placement of the fields is irrelevant. It's just the matching. But if you want your interface, because you were talking about the little wizard, you want the interface to show up when when you click on the new record button, you want certain fields to be placed in a certain order, because you don't want the person entering information, before entering, for example, name, description, right? Name and the description, you want to make sure those are entered first before entering quantity, price, or let's say start date, end date, for example. You know, so
yeah,
that was one of the things I learned and realized. Okay, a schema builder helps you put all this neatly together, but you still have to go to the object manager and within the page layouts to organize the structure of the field themselves.
Yeah,
So
and
whatever
they
you
do
see
give you
here doesn't necessarily correlate to the actual placement of those fields on the page.
right, and yeah, because you'll have all those default fields too visible, like created date, created by,
Yes.
modified by,
Hmm.
and that's super helpful on something like an opportunity or a contact in the sales process, but probably something that you don't need when you're the one creating the events. They were going to be created by you. You don't need that
Hmm.
taking up valuable screen real estate. Um,
Yes, that's right.
it does give me a good chance to show off too in Schema Builder. They do have a shortcut, so once you've got your objects, you can always click on the little wrench up here and then go to the page layout for that object itself. So you don't have to go to Object Manager or go to page layouts and then search for the object. You can sort of, if you have a mind to it, pick all the ones that you want, and then you'll have a nice tab open for each, and then you can run through and tweak the page layout for each. It's going to load slowly, and it'll
Yes,
take
and
you
you're
right
right.
into
Yes, you
the,
can do that automatically from Schema Builder.
yeah, I mean, it still
So,
takes you back into the Object Manager and page layouts where you were
right.
saying. I just wanted to show the little
No, but
shortcut
you're
to
right.
get
It's a
there.
nice, those little, shortcuts do go a long way. So you don't have to worry about going back and forth.
Yeah.
And on actually, one more thing, observation that I didn't notice while I was working on my app is permission settings are very important when you're trying to make changes through Schema Builder. I did notice that you do have to do a refresh within Schema Builder to see the changes apply. And permission settings, so the permission, the person making the change on that object or field doesn't have access or permission on that, you will not see that change be applied. So I know that's normal and standard, but I did notice that, um, making sure, because you can apply a change and it won't dynamically show on the page immediately. A quick refresh does tend to fix that rather quickly, especially when you have multiple tabs open. You want to make sure you're refreshing so it applies the change directly.
Yeah. And I think I'll probably save this for the next episode, but since we were talking about page layout, I think everyone's fairly familiar with the detail section here where you can, drag and drop your fields and get them all laid out correctly. But I think next time we'll also probably dive into the value of this little wrench on related lists, because if you don't touch it, it'll show you all those related items that you worked hard to create all your connections to, but all you'll see is like the record ID of the item. And
Yep.
you're like, that's not helpful. I want to see like the name, the date, how much
Yes,
it cost, like show me
I know you.
everything. And that's where that wrench will come in handy. So I'm making a note for episode 2 of this, what we learned building apps, to
I
talk about the little
definitely know
wrench
what you're
there.
talking about because I definitely ran into that problem that kept like pulling my hair out trying to figure out where's my data at, where's my
Yeah.
information. I know
Yeah.
it's there somewhere, but I can't figure out why it's not showing up. So definitely need to hit the nail on the coffin on that one.
Yeah, so that'll be good for episode 2. Was there anything else that comes to mind for this first run through that you?
No, actually, if anything at all, please go try it out yourself. I'm pretty sure you guys will find even more stuff. And it was actually a fun experience. I want to keep working on it because there's other ideas that I came up and other apps that I want to consider making. And this was a great experience. So I do appreciate the opportunity of being able to kind of get that hands-on experience. I really like to do that. If you don't actually do something yourself, it's hard to kind of just read and read until you actually start doing things yourself. Just like Chris said, you won't run into those issues and be able to share that information. So, any information I said, please feel free to correct us if there's anything, or you have additional questions. Please leave them in the comments below, or anything you want to say, or maybe something you want us to talk about next time. Feel free to
Yeah,
let us know.
absolutely. And I think in the description of this video, I'll include a link to a couple of the modules that you and I both have done on app building, because there's some good projects on Trailhead to get you started. I think I did the build your own space station one years ago, and sort of teaches you about the basics of creating objects and fields and how you start thinking about those relationships. And then, yeah, after that, nothing better than getting your hands dirty and trying to like come up with your very own use case, because that's really how you'll learn how powerful Salesforce is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you for joining me today, Jesus. Good luck on the events app. Thank you, everybody, for watching and joining. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to these videos for up-to-date Salesforce news, recaps of events, how-to videos, videos like this where we talk about what we're learning as we go through it. And we will see you next time. Thanks again, Jesus.
All righty. Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everybody. Y'all take care. Bye.
Bye.